Hi there, my name is Jennifer French and I am coming to you from the Yoga Sanctuary in downtown Punta Gorda, Florida. And today I'd like to talk to you about a posture that we call the hero's pose, or in Sanskrit, the language of yoga, we say Virasana. Virasana is a posture that can be used for many different things. Classically, it might be a simple meditation seat or a place where you start your practice, do a little centering and grounding. It is, in essence, a seated posture. We consider it a pose that's really great for your knees, unless it's not. And with that said, I want to show you ways of taking the pose that use yoga props and might make it much more comfortable for you, specifically for those of us that might struggle with some knee issues or tightness in our thighs. All of these props can be really useful. So let's take a peek at what we've got here. I've got 2 blocks. I have a bolster, a number of blankets, and even a strap. I'm going to put the strap aside. I don't know that we're going to utilize that today. So let's go ahead and take a single blanket. First, just putting a blanket down on your mat can help make the pose much more comfortable, cushioning and supporting your knees and your shins. So I like to open my blanket out and spread it nice and wide so that it'll look like this. And then we come to kneel on the blanket with our shins all the way on the blanket. So you see that I'm supported from the knee to the top of the foot, or really to the tip of the toes. I'm going to now turn around so that you can see me from behind as I take some of these blocks to use in the posture. Now as I turn around, my toes hang off the blanket, but that's okay for right now. I'll take these 2 blocks. I'm going to bring them between my ankles, right? And I'm stacking one on top of the other. I'm also going to take a blanket on top of the blocks so that it looks like this. And now I'll reach back behind my knees and drag the flesh of the calves down and away as I come to sit. So when you come to sit, your toes will point straight back and your heels straight up. So let me turn around now so that I can face you. I'll take my support behind me. And as I come back to the posture, you'll see here, front facing, that my knees are touching. They're pretty close together. You could certainly have a little bit of space between the knees. I don't want to go too wide. That makes it a whole nother posture. So for the Virasana, we're pretty in line with our hips, maybe even touching. Again, the feet are pointing straight back, the toes point straight back, and the heels straight up. And we bring our hands to rest on our legs, and this would be the posture, the Virasana. So some of us might not need as much support. Let me move aside once again and show how you might take some of the support aside. Could take a block, put that off to the side. Instead of using 2 blocks on top of each other, maybe I'll use 1 block at this mid-height. You could still have your blanket on top of the block, of course, to give it a little cushion, a little bit more height. You can even lower that block all the way down, or use just the blanket in place of the block. So there's so many ways. I like to start at the highest level and then ease my way down. So you'll see, once you get yourself nice and comfortable, and perhaps all the way down to the blanket, you'll see here that my heels are flush to the hips. That's why there's that space between the feet. Long-term goal, maybe over lifetimes, your hips lower closer and closer and closer to the ground. It's a good stretch through the thighs here for sure. I can feel that at the tops of my thighs and even in my knees a little bit. Right, so then we bring our hands back to the legs, and this is where we might take our meditation practice, or we might just center and ground before we go into more posture work or asana work. What happens if this doesn't feel great in your ankles, right? Not all of our feet point straight back like that. So let me show you another tip. I'm going to come forward, move this blanket aside, and then I'll roll my blanket up here that I was kneeling on. I'll give it a nice solid roll. I'm going to bring my block back once again. You'll see why. And that block is behind the roll. Now, I'll take my ankles to the top of that blanket roll. Still reach back behind the calves. Move that flesh aside and lower yourself down. Okay, so now there's a little less extension through the ankle joint. And I have a little bit more space and room. It feels pretty good for my feet right here. And you could play with that height of the roll. You could go higher if you like. You might end up with another block underneath you as well. So it's another way of working in the pose to really release any strain through the ankle joint. What happens when your knees don't love this? All right. We could, in fact, bring some support between the calves and the thighs. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to unroll my blanket for now, and then I'll take a second blanket. And as I come back to where I was, I definitely want that block between my feet, between my ankles. I'll take that second blanket, unfold it once, bring it back behind my knees. You could certainly keep it folded a little bit more. Tuck it right into the fold of the knee joint and then slowly lower back down. So you can't see it as well, but that block is still there supporting my hips. This feels really nice now through the knee joint. Creates a little bit of space, a little bit of openness. Doesn't feel as compressed. And like I said, you could have this blanket folded even a bit more. Or take your bolster, bring it behind you onto your calves. Definitely still want the block there to add a little support and come to sit up on the bolster. This one feels fabulous for me. So whatever you choose to do in your hero's pose, I invite you to explore all of these different kinds of prop usages, see what works best for you, and then finally, if none of them feel great, we might move all this stuff aside and come to simply sit in a cross-legged pose. And if you're interested in learning more about this posture, we call it Sukhasana. We have a couple videos that explore the Sukhasana as well. So that's that for our hero's pose today. I invite you to share your experience, and particularly if you have other ways of practicing the hero's pose, I'd love to hear about that. And if some of these ideas work for you, I'd love to hear about that as well. Drop me a comment below. I'd love for you to give this video a like, and if you're interested in seeing more of these kinds of things, definitely subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you on the mat one day.